Good evening. Over the weekend, down in Orlando, Florida, was CPAC, which stands for the Conservative Political Action Conference, and it's pretty much the biggest gathering of conservatives every single year in America. On Sunday, President Trump gave a speech. It was his first public speech since he left office, and in it, he asserted himself as the de facto leader of the Republican Party, and he gave us some insight into his future plans. Let's go through it together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. So let's begin today's discussion by going over President Trump's first speech since leaving office. And before we actually get into it, I'd like to mention that over at CPAC, Trump's position as the leader of the conservative movement was pretty clear throughout the 4 days. At both the different speeches as well as the different panels, the crowd would often break out into cheers and applause when President Trump's name was mentioned. And interesting also to note is that none of the speakers actually criticized President Trump on almost any point. And furthermore, a poll was taken at the conference which showed that 95% of those who were in attendance wanted President Trump's policies to be continued, and furthermore, 97% of the people who were polled approved of his performance while he was in office. Also, interesting to note, there was another poll at CPAC which found that 55% of the respondents would vote for President Trump if he was to run again as the Republican nominee in 2024. And the runner-up in that poll was actually the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who got 21% of the vote. And interestingly, in that poll, if you look at the very, very bottom, is Mike Pence, who got just 1% of the vote, calling into question who would actually become the vice president if President Trump was to run for office again. If Mike Pence is polling so low, it looks like he has fallen out of favor with the conservative movement, potentially. And so, at his actual speech, President Trump asserted himself as the de facto leader of the Republican Party and announced that the movement that he started, the MAGA movement, is far from over. In the speech, he said this: "I stand before you today to declare that the incredible journey we began together 4 years ago is far from over." Now, one critical aspect of his speech, and something that a lot of people were anticipating, was the question of where President Trump actually stands on the Republican Party itself. Because there was a lot of talk a few weeks back of him possibly starting a new political party altogether. Well, he answered that question pretty bluntly. He said that he is not interested in starting a third political party and added that, "We are not starting new parties. We have the Republican Party. The Republican Party is united. The only division is between a handful of Washington, D.C. establishment political hacks and everybody else over the country. The future of the Republican Party is as a party that defends the social, economic, and cultural interests and values of working American families, of every race, every color, and every creed. Republicans believe that the needs of everyday citizens must come first." Now, we should take a moment and highlight this mention of unity that President Trump talked about. About a week ago, Senator Rick Scott, who is the National Republican Senatorial Committee chairman, he released a memo urging Republicans throughout the country to quickly drop the internal squabbling and focus on defeating the Democrats in future elections. Here's what he wrote in part. "Now is not the time for division, and here's why. For the first time in any of our lives, socialism has become the unabashed governing policy of the Democrat Party. The Democrats are fast abandoning any pretense of allegiance to the First and Second Amendments of our Constitution. They'll give up on the rest of it in due time." And he furthermore in that letter called for unity. And in President Trump's speech at CPAC, he touched on the same issue as well. He said that over the next 4 years, Republicans have to be the bulwark against socialism, communism, and the Biden administration policies. And actually, on that note, President Trump heavily criticized the policies and the decisions of the Biden administration. He stated it pretty bluntly. "We all knew that the Biden administration was going to be bad, but none of us imagined just how bad they would be and how far left they would go. Joe Biden has had the most disastrous first month of any president in modern history." Furthermore, later in that speech, President Trump criticized the immigration and security policies along the U.S. southern border, the slow reopening of schools that are still closed due to the pandemic, as well as the need for tougher actions against the Chinese Communist Party. And on that last note, he said that, "We believe in standing up to China, shutting down outsourcing, bringing back our factories and supply chains, and ensuring that America, not China, dominates the future. Companies that leave America to create jobs in China and other countries that have ripped us off for years should not be rewarded. They should be tariffed, fined, and punished." Now, President Trump did not officially confirm that he will be running again in 2024, but he didn't rule it out either. He said that Democrats should suffer withering losses in the midterms and to lose the White House decisively 4 years from now. Our movement of hardworking American patriots is just getting started, and in the end, we will win. And so while presidential advisors to President Trump are saying that he might announce it in the near future, thus far he has not officially stated that he will run for office in 2024. What's interesting to note here, though, is that since Mike Pence polled so lowly, at least at CPAC, who would President Trump choose as his vice presidential nominee? I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Leave a comment in the comment section below as to who you think would be a great vice president to President Trump if he were to run again in 2024. Now, if you would like to watch the full video of that speech at CPAC, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And also, I'd like to note something. While our team was down at CPAC, we got some great interviews with a host of people, including James O'Keefe, Mike Pompeo, Ken Paxton, Ben Carson, Jim Jordan, Kevin Sorbo, who was Hercules, Devin Nunes, Gordon Chang, Matt Schlapp, among many others. If you would like to check out those interviews as well, all those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a quick moment to smash that like button, because you already know that videos that are like this, talking honestly about what's happening in this world and in this country, are routinely censored or throttled by big tech giants like YouTube. However, when you smash that like button that's below this video, you are forcing the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. Now, besides President Trump, there were many other conservative and Republican speakers down at CPAC. One interesting speech that I'd like to highlight was from South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem. On stage, she said that COVID did not crush the economy. Government crushed the economy. Just as quickly, government turned around and held itself out as the savior. And frankly, the Treasury Department cannot print money fast enough to keep up with Congress's wishes. But not everyone has followed this path. Now, in case you don't know, South Dakota was the only state in the union that never ordered any businesses or churches to close, never imposed a lockdown, never imposed a mask mandate, and they never went and classified businesses into essential and non-essential categories. Now, of course, in so doing, the governor of South Dakota became a target for both the establishment media as well as Democrat politicians. And justifying her approach, here's what she had to say. Even in a pandemic, public health policy needs to take into account people's economic and social well-being. People need to keep a roof over their heads. They need to feed their families, and they need their dignity. In my administration, we resisted the call for virus control at the expense of everything else. We looked at the science, the data, and the facts, and then we took a balanced approach. And what's really interesting to note is that at this moment, South Dakota appears to be doing pretty well. According to Governor Noem, South Dakota now has the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country, and the state's economy is booming. And when you look at the raw COVID data for the entire country, despite not having any lockdowns, over the last 30 days, in the last month, South Dakota had fewer cases per capita than some of the biggest lockdown states, such as California, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Now, of course, South Dakota's actions are part of a more broader discussion on the role of lockdowns that are not just in America, but throughout the entire world. And interesting to note is that just yesterday, the World Economic Forum had to take down a Twitter post which claimed that lockdowns were quietly improving cities across the globe. In that tweet, they posted a video, which has now been deleted, which discussed all of the benefits of lockdowns, saying that there were record falls in air pollution, clearing city skies from Asia to America, but by late 2020, it had returned to pre-pandemic levels. Carbon emissions were also down 7% last year, but the drop won't slow climate change unless we lock in emissions cuts. Now, the reason that they had to delete that tweet was because it sparked a social media firestorm. Twitter users from across the political spectrum criticized the World Economic Forum for being an elitist group that is out of touch and making light of the millions of lives that have been lost to the pandemic in one way or another, and the many businesses which did not survive the lockdowns. The backlash was so intense that it caused the World Economic Forum to backtrack, and they posted this. We're deleting this tweet. Lockdowns are not quietly improving cities around the world, but they are an important part of the public health response to COVID-19. However, according to the governor of South Dakota, that fact is debatable. If you'd like to read more about this deleted tweet from the World Economic Forum or about what's been happening over in South Dakota, those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now, before we move on over to Arizona, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce our sponsor for today's episode, and I will do so from the sound booth. That's right. The sponsor of today's episode is American Hartford Gold, which is a company that's run by patriots, which is why they sponsor a channel like ours. So I don't have a PhD in international economics, but my common sense tells me that when the government is printing so much money in all these stimulus programs, when the Federal Reserve is buying up a colossal amount of assets and in that process creating more currency into our system, and when the national debt is ballooning to close to $30 trillion and yet nobody is talking about it, that's a recipe for a disaster for our fiat currency, for the US dollar. So what I do is every single month, I just allocate a portion of my salary to buying physical gold and silver. And by the way, I am not qualified to give you any type of investment advice. I just tell you what I do. And I believe that physical gold and silver had value 5,000 years ago. It has value today, and it'll likely have value 5,000 years into the future, which is unfortunately more than I can say for the American dollar. Again, just my opinion. And if you're looking to buy physical gold and silver, I would highly recommend that you check out American Hartford Gold. They're one of my personal gold dealers, and they are phenomenal. They have great customer service with the Better Business Bureau. They have an A+ rating, and they're just great people to work with. They're friendly, honest, transparent, just great, everything you could basically want from a gold dealer. I'll throw a link into the description box below this video where you can type in your email, and they will send you a PDF book, basically a guide to beginning to invest in gold and silver. And by the way, they make it super simple. They can either deliver physical gold and silver to your doorstep or deposit it directly into your IRA account, making the whole thing super simple. So check out the link in the description box below or give them a call at 866-242-2352, 866-242-2352, or you can text Roman to 65532. American Hartford Gold, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. And now, Roman in the studio, back to you. And now let's talk a bit about what's happening over in Arizona. 3 days ago, so last Friday, a judge ruled that Maricopa County must hand over about 2 million ballots from the last election and allow access to its election equipment so that the Arizona State Senate can conduct an audit. Now, there is a bit of backstory here, by the way, because these officials technically should have handed over all these ballots several months ago, because that was when the subpoenas for them were issued by the Arizona State Senate. However, the Maricopa County officials there claimed that the subpoenas were unlawful and they refused to hand over the materials. And they fought the matter in court, which took several months. And ultimately they lost, although they dragged out the process long enough that we're now well past the election. The judge in the case ruled that the subpoenas issued by Arizona's State Senate are valid and should be enforced. He wrote that the court finds that the subpoenas are legal and enforceable. There is no question that the senators have the power to issue legislative subpoenas. In that same ruling, the judge further argued that the Arizona legislature clearly has the power to investigate and examine election reform matters, and that senators can subpoena material as part of an inquiry into election reform measures. Now, this ruling was praised by Republican lawmakers over in Arizona who have been waiting for these ballots for several months now. For instance, the Arizona Senate president, she told news outlets that she praised the decision and emphasized that their wish for an audit was never about overturning the election. It was about the integrity of the Arizona election system. This was always about voter integrity and the integrity of the voting system itself. Another state senator, Warren Peterson, he confirmed that the Senate will go through what he called a forensic audit of Maricopa County's election results. Now, the vice chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, he wrote on Twitter that the county has nothing to hide. Furthermore, he wrote that officials have conducted 3 fully transparent audits, including 2 forensic audits by independent, qualified, and outside vote system testing laboratories. I trust the Senate will be completely transparent with the public, as Maricopa County has been. From the beginning, the county sought clarification from the court. The court has ruled. I look forward to working with the Senate to provide them the information they are requesting. Now, given that statement from the supervisor, it looks like Maricopa County will be handing over the documents to the state Senate. However, there is another possible option, which is that they might actually try to appeal the judge's decision at the appellate court level. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we actually reached out to Maricopa County for comment, but we have yet to hear back. And regardless of which path they decide to take, we'll be watching the story closely and keeping you abreast of any developments that go on over at Maricopa County. If you'd like to read more about this court's decision about these ballots for yourself, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now let's talk about Texas. Last month, 4 people were arrested over in Texas on 150 counts of voter fraud dating all the way back to the 2018 Medina County primary election. Now, according to the Texas Attorney General's Election Fraud Unit, among the people who were arrested was a man named Thomas Ramirez. Who is he? Well, he is a Medina County Justice of the Peace, and he was arrested on election fraud allegations. According to a release from Ken Paxton's office, and Ken Paxton is, by the way, the Attorney General in Texas, these 4 people were arrested in a case which involved allegations of vote harvesting at assisted living centers back in the 2018 Medina County primary election. And the charges that these people face range from counts of organized election fraud, unlawful possession of ballots, illegal voting, tampering with government records, and so on. Now, we reached out to the Texas Attorney General's office for comment on this case, but we have yet to hear back. And if you remember, this is not the first high-profile arrest involving voter fraud in Texas even this year. In a separate incident, a woman was caught in an undercover video by Project Veritas as she was bragging about being able to deliver thousands of votes for tens of thousands of dollars. Take a look.
We're looking at top ticket to get votes for Eager Biden. How many votes do you think you can deliver for us?
At least 5,000.
And what are we looking at as far as how much that's going to cost?
For the entire team that I'm looking at 55,000.
So $55,000 for 5,000 votes, top the ticket, Eager Biden.
If not more, I'm not going to overpromise, because remember, we're 16 days till election day. You give me cash, you can do whatever you want to do.
$55,000 upfront, 5,000 votes.
That's right.
And based on that video footage, the Texas Attorney General opened an investigation, and that woman was later arrested back in January on charges including election fraud and illegal voting. If she is convicted, she faces a prison sentence of up to 20 years. Now, these types of efforts to combat voter fraud are becoming increasingly important because conservatives as well as Republicans are starting to cite election integrity as the issue that they care most about. For instance, over at CPAC over the weekend, the attendees there took a poll about the most important issues to them. And as you can see, election integrity was at the very top of the list. So obviously, it is an important issue to a lot of people who are beginning to feel increasingly disenfranchised. That's all for us here on Facts Matter. Stay tuned next for Deep Dive with Tiffany Meyer. And until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.